Hello once again, and thank you all for viewing and tuning in together with us. It's a wonderful day to come and counter another topic, a very brutal topic. And with me here is a wonderful panel whom I'll let them to introduce themselves, and I hope you'll be blessed. So we'll start off with you, sir.
My name is Kevin Mwangi. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and I specialize in international and regional human rights and humanitarian law.
Good morning, viewers. My name is Esther Wagema, Treasurer JPRC, the co-host today. You're welcome.
Thank you. And so I'll be your host. My name is Maxwell Mulwa, also a member in the JPRC. So guys, our topic today is on police brutality. We've discussed a lot on the background. So what really is police brutality? Because we don't know what this thing is. For some of us, it's a new thing. And for some of us, it's been happening, but it's actually come to limelight right now during this pandemic period. So what is police brutality, if you may explain?
So let me start by giving a brief background on police brutality. So you've said some of you think it's new, some it's been an ongoing phenomenon. So let me demystify that. So Kenya has had a long history with excessive force, often resulting in injuries and death. This has been going on since since the British colonial rule, where they used the police to protect the interest of the administration rather than protecting the interest of the population. Fast forward to post-independence leaders, the first president, Jomo Kenyatta, used the police force to suppress dissenting voices. A good example is the Kisumu massacre, which happened in 1969, where the police fired into a crowd protesting at the president's visit. At least 11 people were killed and hundreds were injured. His successor, Daniel Arap Moi, used the police as a tool for repression and assassination, as well as detention and torture for his political opponents. During the COVID period, I think, is when we have really got to feel the police brutality. In the first days of the implementation of the curfew, 6 people had died from police violence, and many had been injured, tortured, and beaten as they were going back home. Reports from the Independent Policing Oversight Authority report that at least 87 people had been injured since March 27th as of July, and preliminary investigations from the authority linked 15 deaths to the police and 31 assaults and harassment to the police during the enforcement of the curfew. Between March 15th and 27th of May 2020, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights had recorded 42 cases of torture by law enforcement agencies, and similar trends had been reported by the by the UN. So we go back to, what is police brutality? Police brutality or police violence is legally defined as a civil rights violations where the law enforcement officers exercise undue or excessive force against a subject. This includes, but is not limited to, bullying, physical or verbal harassment, physical or mental injury, property damage, and death. This is usually an umbrella term, and contextualizing it to Kenya, I'll deal with 2 issues. The first will be torture. So before 2017, we never had a law defining what torture is. And so in Article 25 of the Constitution, it says that one shall not be tortured, and that is an underogable right, which means it can never be limited by any circumstance, but it never gave life to what exactly that means. And so in the Prevention of Torture Act is where we derive our definition of torture. And so it says it's any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical, this means the beatings, you can be shot, the likes, or mental, where it can be through threats, being held incommunicado, and the such is intentionally inflicted on a person for purposes of either obtaining information, for discriminatory purposes, or for maybe punishing a person for an act or an omission, or any other purpose instigated by a public official or with the consent of a public official. So by a public official, I mean through the Constitution, which I derive our definition, it means a person whose remuneration comes from the consolidated fund. So if you're not paid through the consolidated fund, like myself, you don't qualify to be a public official. But you can also, if a public official consents to someone being tortured, that can also be maybe a police officer consents to me torturing someone else, that also falls under the definition of torture. And so the other second aspect to it is extrajudicial killing. We have always had this name. I don't personally subscribe to the name because I believe only a court of law can determine whether a person used excessive force. And so I like using the word police killings, which makes it a person is innocent until proven guilty. When you use extrajudicial killings, you already become the judge, the jury, and have already determined that that was outside the mandate of the law. But in layman terms, extrajudicial killings is the killing of a person by government authorities or individuals without the sanctions of any judicial process, proceedings, or legal process. So by law, use of force during law enforcement must be lawful, necessary, proportionate, and accountable. By proportionate, I mean that I cannot be holding a mwiko and going against a police officer and decides to shoot me. The force that he used must be proportionate to the amount of threat that I possess. And so, yes, basically, so police officers should use only the amount of force necessary to mitigate an incident, such as effecting an arrest or protecting themselves or others from harm. So basically, I think that is what police brutality means. So focusing on the two main forms of police brutality that we have in Kenya.
Okay, so it's a first. I've actually known right now there's a difference between torture and assault. So in relation to police brutality, now as we've known what it entails about, so what can I do? What can I do when such an event happens to me? Just to put it out clear, for example, let me take that example of someone, mtu amekuja na mwiko, and you're going to face, you're being faced by a police. So first of all, before you even get to the police brutality, do we assess who was at fault in the beginning and then we head on to police brutality? Or do we first of all go direct to police brutality?
So we have investigative bodies that will do the work and produce documents. From those documents, they take them to the court of law. Then a court of law, through a judicial process, everybody has the right to a fair trial. Through that trial is what will determine whether it was police brutality, whether it was torture or extrajudicial killings. And there's no legal term as police brutality.
Okay. So, having said that, so now it's in the court or it's been determined. We know who is at fault. So, what do I do if I'm being faced with such a scenario? I was maybe killed. Someone, not me, I can be killed and then I'm talking. Someone was killed and he was innocent, or someone was beaten or all that. Someone faced this police torture, what do I or someone who's in need, what can they do to seek help?
So it usually depends on what kind of brutality you've faced. So let me start by a case where you've been beaten, but you're not very physically harmed. And so you can go and report it. And so some of the reporting agencies would be the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. This was established after the 2007-2008 post-election violence. So there was a task force that was formed called the Ransley Task Force, which was formed to investigate and see what happened, because there were allegations that the police were used during the violence. And so some of their recommendations were that we needed to have a civilian oversight authority to just check into, monitor the doings of the police. And so this was established in 2011, and it's the one that checks onto the police. So it investigates, it does impartial investigations, it does inspections, audits, and monitoring of the National Police Service to enhance professionalism and discipline within the service. And so they have legal officers, they have investigative officers, and so they will be able to check and see. You see, the police is very hard for them to investigate themselves. And so that will ensure there's impartial investigations. The other place you can go is the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, whose main mandate is to investigate and provide redress to human rights violations. And so once you go and you lodge your complaint, they're able to conduct investigations and produce a report in terms of the same. There's a National Police Service. They are also mandated to investigate. And so even you'll find in the Prevention of Torture Act, there's a whole system on how they should investigate. And so the DCI primarily is the one that would be the one investigating cases of the sort. We also have what is called under the Constitution, the Director of Public Prosecutions can direct the National Police Service to conduct investigations. So you can go to the ODPP and they can mandate the National Police Service to actually conduct investigations on a certain case. We also have what is called the Internal Affairs Unit, which is housed within the police service. The mandate is receiving and investigating complaints against the police. So they'll also do their own investigations. And we also have the civil society. And so, for example, what is called the independent, what is called the IMLU. And so IMLU. And so they are able to provide you with legal, medical, and psychological redress. And so they'll ensure they provide rehabilitative services in case you've been injured, or in case you're dead even, they conduct autopsies. And they also give you a lawyer in case your case has enough legal standing, and they give you psychological support. Yes.
So, Madam Ogema, do you have a question?
Yes, maybe what Kevin can explain to us, because what I see in Kenya today, the first step of reporting a crime is through the police station, and especially when it comes to crime against humanity. You don't go straight to court. You first go to the police station to report a case so that you can put the statement down and all. Yet the police are the ones meeting the brutality against the humanity. Where do you think in such a scenario, any person who is assaulted or facing police brutality would really get justice, and yet you're seeking justice for the people whom you're reporting to? Is there a way a person can go, rather than having to go to the police first, is there a place that we can go to report police brutality? As you have said, most of them have policemen. Would they agree to prosecute their own?
So before 2010, before we no longer knew, before the constitution we have right now currently, the police used to be the investigators and the prosecutors and the perpetrators. And so it's such a flawed system, justice was never to be realized. And so after the 2007 and 2008 general elections, this became very loud. We could see that it was never going to work. And so the Ransley Task Force was mandated to investigate and find out what exactly happened. And so that is where the Independent Policing Oversight Authority came in. They were supposed to keep a track on police and see and maintain and monitor and investigate police allegations against the police, sorry. And so when you've been, when the police have violated your rights, that would be the place to go, because they will investigate, they will have a file, and then they will forward it to the ODPP and prosecution will happen. Currently, I know they have 4 convictions already that have happened since they began operations. And so it's a system, it is slow and it has its challenges, but it's work in progress that I have seen them working.
Are you saying that I can walk into the police oversight offices and report an assault or a crime committed against me and it will be okay?
Yes, they are not the police. These are civilians.
Where are they found?
They are found in Upper Hill. Yes, but they have offices, regional offices. Yes.
Awesome. Because I know most Kenyans out here didn't really know. Or actually, for me, I'm starting to just realize that there are some more, as in this much, organizations to go to. And for that person who's out there in the streets, you know, that person who doesn't have any ability, you know, maybe somehow he made anezona hana nguvu, hana pesa or something like that, and maybe he thinks he'll go to these departments and has to pay for investigations, has to do this and that. Are there measures really being put to place, or are there any ways to help those people who are really in need? And okay, not really need, because a need is a need. People who can't maybe pay for investigations, does the police oversight do investigations for free, or do they follow up on the cases that we've even had in the news?
So yes, they do. They follow up on those cases, and those that they find describable evidence, they forward them to the OTPP for prosecution. But the reality is justice is different to different people. And so you can investigate a case, but I have a wound, I've been paralyzed. I've done a case of someone who was paralyzed, was beaten until they got paralysis. And so they need medical care for the rest of their life, primarily. And so you'll investigate a case. It may take 10 years to be in court, but then what? So one of the things the Prevention of Torture Act came to do was provide rehabilitative services from the Victim Protection Fund. Unfortunately, this fund has not yet been set up. And so it's the fallback now being civil societies. Services, so psychological, medical. Unfortunately, when for autopsies, you have to pay some amount of money for the autopsy to be conducted. And so if you don't have that money, the civil society comes in. But where the space of civil society is really shrinking, the funding for Kenya is now it's the second middle income earning country. And so we don't have as much money as civil society as we used to. So unless our systems start working for themselves, we're going to find ourselves crashing. And yes.
So having said that, I think now the responsibility also falls now on independent entities, yes, that can support such people. So down to the question. So right now we'll just get to a conclusion. I know there's a lot to talk about today, so there's the law. There's need for awareness. I've seen there's a very much need for awareness, for people to be told for which independent entities to go to, for where to go and seek help. But also we have a responsibility, as we are Christians also, we are in a church, as we are JPRC people. These are all groups meant to help the society, to help us grow together as one. What do you think is our role? Having this also as first of the solutions to tell people such cases of such solutions, what next step do you think you as a Christian and us as a church do we need to take? So I'll take one very brief conclusions from both of you to help.
If you allow me,
Yeah, okay,
host,
okay.
I have one burning question which I would like to ask our facilitator. More often than not, we find that police brutality, which to me I would, in quotes, call it unfairly meted to our youth, especially the young youth in the ages between, more often than not, 18 to 25, you find that the police are very fond of harassing them, maybe just because of, and we know our young people are very energetic. They will more often than not gather in groups and probably just have their chit chat, and more often than not, you'll find the police will come and harass them, sometimes arrest them for no apparent reason. When they get in, toa kitu kidogo ndio utoke. Kama hutoki unaenda you find yourself umeekelewa, you had bangi or something like that. What is this that the police love so much about harassing the youth, especially the male gender? Would it be regarded as profiling the men, the young men, or gender violence? Could it be also regarded as part of gender violence? And what can the youth do? Because parents are always in fear, especially when you have a youth in the house. You are ever in fear this guy has not come back and he might end up in a police station somewhere and even sometimes be killed because when they become resistant. What is their legal reprieve to avoid this? And also, I saw as in a case, that's question number one. Then I also saw sometimes when you're being arrested, what is an arresting officer supposed to do so that you can be legally arrested? Because there was a case in Nakuru which I would not want to really judicially, or rather I would like to quote it without any prejudice because I'm not very privy to what was happening. A lady was being arrested and she adamantly resisted arrest. Fortunately, there was the press, and so I'm sure the police toned down. Initially, they were aggressive, but they toned down. What is an arresting officer supposed to do when arresting a criminal or perceived criminal?
Okay. Your first question, unfortunately, the youth are targeted, and not just the youth. I would say youth from peri-urban settlements. Working in human rights, the one thing I've learned is that abuse of human rights and social economic status are tied together. No one will go to Karen to arrest the youth in Karen, but in Kibra and in Mathare, they are arrested all the time and they're killed all the time. And so that is the basis where, I don't know if you know social justice centers. So they were formed on this basis to protect the youth and to protect them from police brutality. And so their reprieve will always be the same, to report. You see, if we never report, then these people think they have the leeway. So I did it once, I can do it again, nothing will ever happen. And we also, so for us is to report and be vocal against it. Because in a society where people know their rights, it's very hard to oppress them. And so for me, I'd say report, and also let us remain educated and remain, if you don't know your rights, you can never voice them out.
Very true.
So we need to educate our people, and we need to make sure that we report as many cases as possible for there to be accountability even. Because even when we submit reports to the UN, they want to see, was there an OB number? Was this reported? What was the due diligence that was happened? Even as a lawyer, for me to go and take a case to the regional and the international level, I have to have maximized on internal mechanisms that we have in Kenya. And that cannot be done unless we report these cases and the proper channels are followed to ensure there's accountability on the same.
So in short, would you advocate for or advise the the education system to introduce probably a lesson in school somewhere along the line to teach Kenyans of their legal rights, or to know their status as far as legal issues are concerned? Maybe just a simple subject that is not very in-depth, that can teach people on what their legal rights are. Would you advocate for that in the system? I know it's difficult,
It is.
but would you advocate for it as a legal person?
It is difficult because even for me to understand my legal rights, I essentially had to go to school for 6 years. So putting it in one, essentially, we have a thing we say in the law that ignorance of the law is not a defense in law. So if I'm arrested, I can't say I didn't know this was an offense in law. So at the end of the day, I would say the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has the mandate to educate Kenyans when it comes to human rights. And the government is mandated to ensure that people understand that their rights. Mm-hmm. And then the law keeps changing every day. So we derive the law from judgments, we derive the law from international instruments, which keep changing with time and time again.
Okay.
So it would be a bit difficult, but I would say we can create mechanisms to ensure that people know their rights, like making the laws a bit simpler and making them as, now when living in the days of internet, we cannot no longer say that I'm not an IT person. Uh-huh. COVID has forced us to step into that domain exactly. And just flow with the flow. So we can use what we have to ensure that as many people as possible are educated. For example, right now we have a lot of webinars happening on human rights. How many have you attended?
Ooh, none.
You see?
None, I think.
And so the second question you asked about the rights of an arrested person. So they're entitled to tell you why you're being arrested and explain it to a language that you understand. They should do it with dignity and not harass you. Yes, basically.
Okay. So, yeah, so due to time, I think we'll have those final conclusions, and then maybe we can now say,
okay.
Thank you. So, yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think is our mandate as a church and as a Christian? Personally, very brief.
You know, we say that we never realize that we have our rights are being violated unless it happens to us. So normally we say, that's torture, it hasn't happened to me yet, so that's none of my business. Police have killed someone, it's not my relative. I think we need to be more proactive in demanding for accountability, in demanding for justice, and being proactive. And also having these lessons, what you're doing today, to just make sure, like what she has asked, how do we ensure that people know their rights? This is one of the avenues. So we need to create a space where the congregation can be taught on their rights and maybe digest it in a very understandable manner.
Okay. Yes.
What I would say is, Christians, you have heard it. We have our legal rights. It is our right to be treated with dignity, whether by the police. It is your right to be explained to why you are being arrested, and you should be arrested in a dignified manner. Therefore, kindly, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Learn your right, learn the law, just a bit of it that can help you in the times of need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and that was a wonderful session. So my take out of all this is, out of you guys out there, I'm also talking to the Christians out there and all the churches. There's one commandment that Jesus Christ gave us, that you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. So do unto others what you want them to be done, to do unto you. So thank you so much. Thank you, and God bless you. I pray that also you spread the word out there. Go tell a friend to tell a friend about the laws, the do's and the don'ts. Don't tell someone the laws and then he goes off and does irresponsible things and now demands help, okay? So let's preach the right gospel and do according to the word. We thank you and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be blessed.
Thank you so much, viewers. Thank you for being with us for the whole week. And right now, I want to tell you all that you can find any support and help that you need for all the guests that you've seen for today and the other days that have passed. You have all these people to help you and to guide you in all of your ways. Just reach out to Pcea Kariobangi South. You can talk to our parish minister, you can talk to a youth coordinator, and they'll direct you to the JPRC where we can assist you with the contracts to the guests that we've been with us so far. So far, we thank you and you do bless that you'll have a wonderful time. God bless.